The great hall on Nexus Prime was filled with angry voices. Thousands of aliens from dozens of worlds sat in their special seats, all talking at once. The room looked like a giant bowl, with seats going up and up in circles. At the bottom, human, Ambassador Jiho Kim stood at a small white podium. Jiho was tired. He had been coming to these meetings for 20 years. His black hair was now gray at the sides. His uniform, dark blue, with Earth's symbol on it, was wrinkled from the long journey to this space station. Around him, alien voices got louder and angrier. "The humans want us to take more refugees," said High Counselor Thexara. She was tall and thin with purple skin and 4 arms. Her voice was cold and sharp. "This is foolish. Why should we care about beings from other worlds?" Other aliens nodded. The crystalline beings from Zephyros made a sound like glass breaking. It meant they agreed. Their bodies looked like walking diamonds, and light passed through them as they moved. "Humans are too young," said one of them. "They have only been in space for 300 years. We have been here for thousands. They do not understand real politics." Jiho felt his hands get tight. He had heard this many times before. The aliens always said humans were too young, too weak, too emotional. But when there was trouble, they always asked humans to fix it. "The human plan is stupid," said another alien. This one came from the water worlds. It looked like a giant squid but could breathe air. "Humans think with their hearts, not their minds. They want to help everyone, but the galaxy is not a charity." More voices joined in. They said humans were soft. They said humans cared too much about feelings. They said humans should learn their place in the galaxy. Jiho looked around the room. In the past 300 years, humans had done so much for the galaxy. When the stellar wars happened, human soldiers died to bring peace. When the Great Plague spread, human doctors found the cure. When species could not talk to each other, humans learned their languages and helped them understand. But the aliens forgot all of this. They only remembered when humans made choices they did not like. "Ambassador Kim," said Thexara, her 4 arms moving as she spoke. "Your people are still children in the cosmic family. Perhaps it is time you learned to listen, instead of trying to lead." The room went quiet. All eyes looked at Jiho. He felt something change inside him. For 20 years he had been polite. He had smiled when they insulted humans. He had said thank you when they barely listened to human ideas. But not today. Jiho stood up straight. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear it clearly. "High Counselor Thexara, you say we are children. You say we do not understand. You say we should learn our place." He looked around the room. "For 300 years, humans have served this council. We have been your mediators when you could not agree. We have been your doctors when you were sick. We have been your soldiers when you were in danger. We have given our lives for galactic peace." The room was very quiet now. Even the crystalline beings stopped their glass-like sounds. "But if our help means so little to you," Jiho continued, "if our ideas are so worthless, if we are such children, then perhaps we should stop trying to help." He picked up his papers from the podium. "The human delegation is leaving this council. We are going home." "You cannot do this," said Thexara, standing up quickly. "This is just a human emotional reaction." "No," said Jiho. "This is a human logical decision. Good day, High Counselor." Jiho walked toward the exit. Behind him, other humans began to stand. Dr. Nari Park, the chief scientist, closed her computer and followed. Captain Minho Lee, who commanded the human spaceships, spoke into his communication device. "All human ships prepare to leave." The aliens watched in shock as every human in the Great Hall walked out. They had never seen this before. Usually, when the council argued, everyone stayed until they found an answer. But the humans were actually leaving. "They will be back," said Thexara to the other aliens. "Humans cannot survive without the council. They need us more than we need them." But as the hours passed, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human diplomats were packing their bags on dozens of worlds. Human scientists were leaving research stations. Human peacekeepers were returning to their ships. On the great research station near the Vega system, Dr. Nari Park supervised the removal of all human equipment. The alien scientists watched in worry as important machines were taken away. Dr. Park, said a crystalline being, surely you will leave some of your research? The galaxy needs your work on faster-than-light communication. Nari shook her head. If human work is so primitive, you should have no trouble replacing it. In the military sector, Captain Minho Lee ordered all human ships to return to Earth territory. Alien fleet commanders sent urgent messages asking why their human advisors were leaving. Captain Lee, said Admiral Vorth of the Hegemony Fleet, our joint mission against the pirates is next week. We need your tactical expertise. Minho's face showed no emotion. You said human tactics were too simple for modern warfare. I am sure your advanced strategies will work fine. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out hundreds of times. Humans politely said goodbye and left. They did not argue, they did not threaten. They simply packed their things and went home. The aliens had spent so long telling humans they were not important that they started to believe it themselves. Now, as human ships jumped to light speed and disappeared, some began to wonder if they had made a mistake. But it was too late. The humans were gone, and for the first time in 300 years the galaxy would have to solve its problems without them. In his ship heading back to Earth, Ji-Ho Kim looked at the stars through his window. He felt sad, but also relieved. Maybe, now the galaxy would learn what it meant to lose the people they took for granted. Behind him, Nexus Prime grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another dot of light in the darkness. 3 months had passed since the humans left. Trade Minister Diane Cho sat in her office on Earth reading reports that came in every day from across the galaxy. The news was not good. Diane was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair tied back in a simple style. She had worked in galactic trade for 30 years. She knew how money and goods moved between the stars better than almost anyone. What she was reading now made her shake her head. The galactic trade network is failing, she told her assistant. Ships are waiting weeks at trade stations. The computer systems we built to help move goods quickly are breaking down without our people to fix them. Her assistant, a young man named Kiwan, looked at his tablet. The aliens are trying to fix the systems themselves, but they do not understand how they work. Dayun almost smiled. The aliens had always said human computers were too simple. They said their own technology was much better. But when the trading system started failing, they discovered something important. Human computers were simple because they had to work with dozens of different alien systems. Making them work together was not simple at all. What about the translation programs? Dayun asked. Those are failing too, said Kiwan. Without human linguists updating them, the aliens are having trouble understanding each other. Yesterday, a trade agreement fell apart because the crystalline beings thought the Velkari were insulting them. It was just a translation error. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Hyunwoo Kang watched as the last human military ships left the border zone between two warring species. The area had been peaceful for 50 years because human peacekeepers patrolled it. Now, without humans to keep the peace, old enemies were fighting again. Hyunwoo was a tall man with broad shoulders and serious eyes. He had been a peacekeeper for 25 years. He had seen what happened when different species tried to solve problems with violence instead of talking. Admiral, said his communications officer, we are getting emergency calls from the border worlds. Fighting has started again between the hegemony and the collective. Let them handle it themselves, Hyunwoo said, but he did not sound happy. They said they did not need human help. But as the days passed, the fighting got worse. Pirates who had been afraid of human patrols became bold. They attacked trade ships and raided peaceful worlds. The neutral zones that humans had protected became dangerous places where no one was safe. Dr. Sujin Yu was studying the reports from her laboratory on Luna, Earth's moon. She was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied how alien minds worked. What she was learning worried her. The different species are having mental breakdowns, she told her research team. The Velkari are a proud people who follow strict rules about who is in charge. But they need flexibility to solve new problems. Humans provided that flexibility. Without us, they cannot adapt when things change. One of her team members, Dr. Junsu, looked confused. But the crystalline beings are supposed to be very smart. They share one big mind. Surely they can solve problems. Sujin shook her head. That is exactly the problem. Their shared mind is very good at processing information that fits their patterns. But when something new happens, something that does not fit, they cannot handle it. Humans were the ones who helped them understand individual problems and translate them into something their group mind could process. The reports kept coming in. On New Geneva, a world where 12 different species had lived together peacefully, riots had started. The human governor had kept everyone working together by understanding what each species needed. Without him, old hatreds came back. On the ocean world of Aquatica, the tidal control systems were failing. The Aquatic Dominion's people lived in underwater cities that needed precise tidal controls to survive. But the systems were designed by human engineers who understood both ocean science and alien needs. The aquatic people were good with water, but they did not understand the complex mathematics needed to control whole oceans. We are getting requests for help every day, Daeun told the Human Colonial Council during their weekly meeting. The council was made up of leaders from all human worlds and colonies. What kind of requests? Asked Council President Boram Han. She was a wise woman who had been elected to lead all human colonies 3 years before. Everything, said Daeun. The stellar wanderers are lost in space because their navigation computers depended on human mathematical models. The crystalline beings want us to fix their communication networks. The Velkari are asking for human mediators to solve disputes in their government. And what are we telling them? President Han asked. Nothing, said Admiral Hyunwoo. We are not answering their calls. They made their choice when they told us we were not needed. But some humans were not happy with this. Dr. Nari Park, who had led the research station evacuation, spoke up during the meeting. Innocent people are suffering, she said. Yes, their leaders were rude to us, but millions of ordinary aliens had nothing to do with that. Should they die because their leaders were proud? They should have thought of that before insulting us, said Captain Minho Lee. For 300 years we helped them. We died for them. We gave them our best technology and our brightest minds. And what did we get? They called us primitive children. The room was quiet. Everyone understood both sides. Humans wanted to help because it was in their nature to care about others. But they were also hurt and angry at being treated badly for so long. The question, said President Han, is what we want to achieve. Do we want revenge? Do we want them to suffer? Or do we want them to learn? I want them to understand what they lost, said Jiho Kim, who had just returned from Nexus Prime. I want them to realize that human weakness was actually strength, that our primitive emotions were advanced problem-solving tools. Outside, the reports kept coming. The galaxy was slowly falling apart without human help. Trade was slowing down. Wars were starting. Different species could not work together without human mediators. But the humans stayed home and watched. They were learning something too. They were learning how much the galaxy had needed them, even when it pretended not to. For the first time in 300 years, humans were not rushing to help solve everyone else's problems. The galaxy would have to figure out how to survive without them. And so far, it was not doing very well. 6 months had passed since the humans left the Galactic Council. Director Solgi Bey sat in her office on Mars, reading the most disturbing reports she had seen in her 30-year career. As head of Human Colonial Affairs, she was responsible for keeping track of human citizens across the galaxy. What she was reading made her stomach feel sick. The situation is getting much worse, she told her staff during the morning meeting. We are not just seeing political problems anymore. Entire civilizations are starting to collapse. Her assistant, Minji Lim, pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked areas of conflict. There were so many red dots that parts of the map looked completely red. The crystalline hive mind has fractured, Minji reported. For the first time in their recorded history, different parts of their collective consciousness are disagreeing with each other. They do not know how to handle conflicting information without the integration systems that human scientists designed. Seolgi shook her head. The crystalline beings had always been proud of their shared mind. They said it made them superior to individual thinkers like humans. But their shared mind only worked when all information could be processed the same way. Humans had built special computer programs that helped translate complex, conflicting data into something the crystalline mind could understand. What about the aquatic dominion? Silgi asked. 3 of their ocean worlds are experiencing ecological disasters, said another staff member. The tidal control systems are failing because no one understands how to maintain them. The systems were built by human engineers who understood both the mathematics of ocean currents and the biological needs of the aquatic people. The reports kept getting worse. The stellar wanderers, nomadic people who traveled between stars and giant ships, were stranded in empty space. Their navigation systems had been designed by humans who had an intuitive understanding of 3-dimensional space travel. Other species could learn to use the systems, but they could not maintain or repair them. Captain Young-Ho Park had been recalled from the outer rim to lead emergency evacuations. He was a good man with kind eyes and steady hands, the kind of person who stayed calm in dangerous situations. But even he looked worried as he gave his report to the Colonial Council. "We are evacuating human civilians from mixed colonies as fast as we can," he said. "Violence is breaking out everywhere. On New Geneva, what started as political disagreements has turned into ethnic cleansing. Species that lived together peacefully for decades are now trying to drive each other off the planet." President Boram Han looked at the evacuation numbers. "How many humans are we bringing home?" 2 million so far, Captain Young-Ho said. "But there are still 3 million humans living in mixed colonies. Some do not want to leave. They say these worlds are their homes too." "They are right," said Dr. Nari Park. "But their safety is more important than their feelings about home." The worst news came from Nexus Prime itself. The great space station that had been the symbol of galactic unity for 800 years was falling apart. Without human engineers to maintain the impossible fusion of dozens of different technologies, systems were failing every day. "The station was always a miracle of engineering," explained Chief Engineer Taemin Choi over a video call from his new position on Europa. "We had to make Velkari power systems work with crystalline computer networks and aquatic life support systems. Every species built things differently. Only humans had the flexibility to make it all work together." "Can they fix it themselves?" President Han asked. Taemin laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "They are trying. But each species only understands their own technology. The Velkari are trying to replace the power systems with their own design, but it does not work with the crystalline computers. The crystalline beings are trying to rewrite the software, but they do not understand how the aquatic life support systems need to be controlled. It is like trying to rebuild a house when each worker only knows how to build one room." Analyst Minji Lim had been studying the psychological reports coming in from across the galaxy. Her analysis was frightening. The different species are not just having political problems, she explained to the council. They are having mental breakdowns. The Velkari evolved in environments where there was always a clear hierarchy, a clear answer about who was in charge. When situations become complex, they cannot function. The crystalline beings evolved as a hive mind, so they cannot handle individual problems or creative solutions. The aquatic people evolved in stable ocean environments, so they panic when conditions change quickly. "And humans?" asked President Han. "Humans evolved on Earth, which was always changing," Minji said. "We had ice ages, volcanic eruptions, climate changes, different environments on every continent. We had to be adaptable, creative, and able to work with many different groups to survive. What the aliens called primitive traits, empathy, flexibility, creative thinking, are actually the most advanced survival characteristics in the galaxy." The news kept getting worse. Ancient feuds between species were starting again without human historians to provide context and human mediators to find solutions. The proud species who had ruled parts of the galaxy for thousands of years were discovering that their specialized evolution made them helpless when facing new problems. "They are like tools in a toolbox," explained Dr. Sujin Yu during a science briefing. "Each species is very good at one thing. The Velkari are good at organizing and following rules. The crystalline beings are good at processing large amounts of similar information. The aquatic people are good at working in stable environments. But humans are like the hand that uses all the tools. Without us, they are just individual tools that cannot work together. Former Ambassador Ji-ho Kim watched the reports from his home in Seoul. He felt sad seeing the galaxy tear itself apart, but he also felt vindicated. They spent 300 years telling us we were not important, he told his wife. Now they are learning what the galaxy looks like without humanity. The final straw came when pirates attacked a civilian transport ship carrying refugees from New Geneva. In the old days, human patrol ships would have responded immediately, but there were no human patrol ships in that sector anymore. The pirates killed everyone on board and escaped. When the news reached Earth, even the humans who had wanted to help felt their hearts grow cold. These were not just political failures anymore. Innocent people were dying because the galaxy could not function without human help. But still, the humans stayed home. They had tried for 300 years to help, only to be told they were unwanted, children who should learn their place. Now the galaxy was learning what that place had really been. The galaxy was learning that humans had not been junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been the foundation that held everything else together. And without that foundation, everything was collapsing. 1 year after the humans left, President Borum Han received a message unlike any in galactic history. It came through every communication channel at once: military frequencies, diplomatic networks, even emergency broadcast systems. The message was from every major species in the galaxy, and it said the same thing in dozens of different languages. Please come back. President Han sat in her office in Geneva City on Earth, looking at the holographic displays showing the desperate messages. She was a woman who had seen many things in her 60 years, but she had never seen anything like this. Read me the one from the Valkyrie, she told her aide, Dongyun Lee. Dongyun cleared his throat. Honored human leaders, the Valkyrie hegemony, formally request the immediate return of human diplomatic presence. We offer territorial concessions, trade advantages, and tribute payments. Our hierarchy cannot function without human mediation protocols. And the crystalline beings? They say their collective consciousness is experiencing what they call critical processing errors. They are begging for human integration specialists to help them think properly again. President Han rubbed her temples. Even the void touched. Collective, who had not spoken to anyone for 1,000 years, had broken their silence to ask for human help. General Jiwan Song, head of Human Military Command, entered the office with intelligence reports. She was a tough woman with sharp eyes who had served in the Stellar Wars 30 years ago. Madame President, she said, our intelligence shows that several species are planning military action against human space, not to conquer us, to force us back to the negotiating table. They are like addicts who cannot get their next fix. What kind of military action? President Han asked. Blockades of our trade routes. Occupation of our outer colonies. Some are even planning to capture human diplomats and scientists to force them to work. General Song put a data tablet on the desk. The aquatic dominion has moved their entire fleet to the edge of our territory. They are not trying to hide it. Dr. Taehyung Kim, the galaxy's leading expert on alien psychology, had been studying the crisis for months. His analysis was disturbing. They have become dependent on us, he explained to the emergency council meeting. For 300 years, they relied on human problem-solving without developing those skills themselves. They are like people who never learned to walk because they always had machines to carry them. Now the machines are gone, and they cannot function. But why? Asked President Han. They are intelligent species. Why can they not solve their own problems? Because, said Dr. Kim, they evolved for specialized survival. The Valkyrie evolved in stable hierarchical societies, so they panic when situations become unclear. The crystalline beings evolved as a collective mind, so they cannot handle individual, creativity, or conflicting ideas. The aquatic people evolved in unchanging ocean environments, so they break down when conditions change rapidly. And humans. Humans evolved as generalists on a planet that was always changing. We had to be adaptable, empathetic, creative, and able to work with different groups to survive. What they called primitive traits are actually the most advanced survival characteristics in the galaxy. The reports from space were getting more desperate every day. Nexus Prime, the great symbol of galactic unity, was dying. Without human engineers to maintain the fusion of incompatible technologies, the massive station was breaking apart. Sections had already been evacuated. The central core, where the Galactic Council had met for 800 years, was losing atmosphere. "They sent us a message yesterday," said Communications Director Una Park. "One word, in perfect human English, please." President Han looked at the holographic map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas of conflict and collapse. There were more red zones than peaceful areas now. Billions of beings were suffering because their leaders had been too proud to treat humans as equals. "What are our options?" she asked the council. "We could let them collapse completely," said General Song. "In another year, most of their governments will fall. We could step in then and rebuild the galaxy according to human principles." "That would mean billions of deaths," said Dr. Nari Park. "Innocent civilians who had nothing to do with their leaders' arrogance." "Or we could go back," said former Ambassador Jiho Kim, who had been invited to the meeting. "But not as we were before. Not as junior partners who get insulted and ignored." "What do you mean?" President Han asked. "I mean we return on our terms," Jiho said. "The galaxy has learned what it is like without us. Now they need to learn what it means to have us back as equals. Or not at all." The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted to let the galaxy burn for its arrogance. Others argued that human nature was to help those in need, regardless of how they had been treated. "The question," said President Han, "is not whether we return. The question is what kind of galaxy we want to create when we do return." Dr. Kim pulled up his psychological analysis. "The aliens are different now. The collapse has humbled them. They have admitted their limitations for the first time in their histories. Some of them are actually studying human behavior, trying to understand concepts like empathy and creative thinking." "Is that real, or just desperation?" asked General Song. "Both," said Dr. Kim. "But desperation can lead to real change, if it is guided properly." Outside Earth's atmosphere, human patrol ships reported that alien vessels were gathering at the edge of human space. They were not attacking, just waiting. Some were sending continuous messages, apologies, requests, offers of anything humans might want. "They are like children who have been left alone and realize they cannot take care of themselves," said Captain Young-Ho Park, who had just returned from evacuating the last human civilians from mixed colonies. "Some of them are angry and demanding. We come back. Others are crying and begging, but all of them know they need us." President Han made her decision. "We will return, but not as we were. We return as the senior partners we always should have been. We return with conditions that will prevent this from ever happening again." "What conditions?" asked Dong-Yun. "Complete restructuring of galactic government," President Han said. "Human rights, including individual dignity and species equality, become universal law. Every species must send representatives to study on human worlds to learn what they call primitive concepts like empathy and compromise. And humans get permanent veto power over major galactic decisions." The room was quiet. These were revolutionary demands that would change the galaxy forever. "And if they refuse?" asked General Song. President Han looked at the holographic map, at all the red zones of chaos and collapse. "Then they can continue solving their problems without us. But I do not think they will refuse. They cannot afford to. The age of humans as junior partners was over. The age of humans as galactic leaders was about to begin. But first, the galaxy would have to prove it had learned its lesson." 18 months after humanity had walked away from the galaxy, negotiator Sang-Hoon Choi stood in a small meeting room on asteroid base Alpha 7. The room was simple and gray, built quickly in the empty space between human and alien territories. Around the table sat representatives from every major species in the galaxy. Sang-Hoon was a calm man with gray hair and patient eyes. He had been chosen to lead the negotiations because he could stay cool even when others became emotional. But even he was surprised by what he saw in the alien delegates. High Counselor Thexara, the proud Velkari leader who had insulted humanity 18 months ago, sat with her forearms folded and her head down. Her purple skin looked pale and she would not look directly at Sang-hoon. Next to her, the crystal being from Zephyros flickered with dim light instead of its usual bright glow. Even the representative from the aquatic dominion who had once called humans primitive children kept its tentacles still and spoke in whispers. "The terms are not negotiable," Sang-hoon said, reading from the document that President Han had approved. "The Galactic Council will be restructured. Humanity will have permanent veto power over all major decisions. Human rights, including individual dignity and species equality, will become universal law throughout the galaxy." The aliens shifted uncomfortably. These demands would change everything about how the galaxy was governed. Furthermore, Sang-hoon continued, "Every species must send representatives to study on human worlds. You will learn what you have called primitive concepts: empathy, compromise, creative thinking, and emotional intelligence. This is a complete change of our way of life," said Thexara quietly. Her voice was different now. Gone was the cold arrogance that had defined her species for thousands of years. "Yes," said Sang-hoon. "It is. The question is whether you prefer this change or the chaos you have experienced for the past 18 months. The crystalline being spoke with a sound like wind chimes. "Our collective consciousness has learned painful lessons about individual thinking. We accept your terms." One by one, every species agreed. They had no choice. Their civilizations were collapsing without human help. 2 months later, Captain Eunbi Kim commanded the first human fleet to return to galactic space. She was young for a fleet captain, only 35, but she had proven herself during the evacuation operations. Her ships moved slowly through space that had once been busy with trade and travel. "What do you see out there, Captain?" asked Admiral Hyun-woo over the communication system. Eunbi looked at her displays showing the space around them. "It is different, sir. The artificial hierarchies have crumbled. Species that used to pretend they were superior to others are now admitting they need help. It is more honest than it used to be." The first stop was Nexus Prime. The great station was still functioning, but barely. Sections had been sealed off, where life support had failed. The central council chamber where the Galactic Council had met for 8 centuries was dark and empty. "Bring engineering teams aboard," Eunbi ordered. "Let us see if we can save this place." Human engineers and technicians began working to repair the station. Alien workers watched them carefully, trying to learn how human technology worked. The proud species that had once dismissed human engineering as simple now took careful notes on every procedure. Administrator Dong-hyun Lee arrived 3 weeks later to oversee the reconstruction of galactic institutions. He was a patient man who had worked in colonial government for 20 years. His job was to build a new kind of galactic government based on human principles. The first new Galactic Council meeting was very different from the old ones. The great circular chamber had been rebuilt, but now the seating was arranged differently. Instead of species sitting in groups based on their power and status, they sat mixed together. Humans were not at the bottom anymore. They had seats at the center where everyone could see them. Ambassador Jiho Kim, who had led the walkout 18 months ago, returned to his role as chief human diplomat. But now when he spoke, everyone listened carefully. No one interrupted. No one dismissed his words as primitive emotion. "The new council will operate on principles of equality and mutual respect," Jiho announced to the assembled delegates. "Every species has value. Every individual has rights. Decisions will be made through discussion and compromise, not through threats and hierarchy." High Counselor Thexara raised one of her 4 hands. "Ambassador Kim, my species has trouble understanding these concepts. Our hierarchy has been our way of life for millennia. How can we learn to think differently?" The old Thexara would never have admitted weakness or asked for help. The new one was humble and willing to learn. "That is why we are sending Velkari students to study on human worlds," Jiho replied. "They will live with human families, attend human schools and learn how we solve problems through cooperation instead of dominance. Similar programs were starting for every species. Crystalline beings were learning about individual creativity on Earth's art colonies. Aquatic people were studying adaptive thinking on human frontier worlds where conditions changed constantly. The changes were not easy. Some species struggled with human concepts like individual rights and emotional thinking, but they had learned the hard way that their old methods did not work in a complex galaxy. The irony, Dr. Taehyung Kim told his research team, is that they always had these capabilities. Evolution gave every species the potential for empathy and creativity, but their cultures suppressed these traits in favor of specialization. Now, they are rediscovering parts of themselves they had forgotten. The galaxy was becoming more peaceful but also more chaotic in a good way. Species were trying new approaches to old problems. Young aliens were questioning their elders' rigid ways of thinking. Art and music were flourishing as different species learned to express individual emotions. 3 years after the return, Ambassador Jiho sat in the rebuilt council chamber listening to a debate about refugee resettlement, the same issue that had triggered the human walkout. But this time the discussion was different. High Counselor Thexera was arguing in favor of accepting more refugees. "These beings need our help," she said. "It is our moral duty to provide sanctuary even if it is difficult for us." The crystalline representative agreed. "Our individual studies have taught us that diversity of thought strengthens our collective consciousness. These refugees bring new perspectives that will benefit all of us." Even the aquatic dominion, which had once been isolationist, was offering to modify some of their ocean worlds to accommodate land-breathing refugees. Jiho smiled as he listened. It had taken the near collapse of galactic civilization, but the ideal aliens had finally learned the lessons humans had been trying to teach for 300 years. "The proposal passes unanimously," he announced. "We will resettle the refugees with dignity and care." After the meeting, Thexera approached Jiho privately. "Ambassador Kim, I owe you an apology. When I said humans should learn their place in the galaxy, I was wrong. We should have been learning our place in the human vision of what the galaxy could become." Jiho nodded. "We all learned something, High Counselor. Sometimes you have to walk away from those who do not value you before they understand what they have lost." "And sometimes," Thexera replied, "you have to lose everything to realize what really matters." Outside the great windows of Nexus Prime, ships from dozens of worlds moved peacefully through space. Trade was flowing again. Conflicts were being resolved through mediation instead of warfare. The galaxy had been rebuilt, not just with human technology, but with human values. The age of galactic chaos was over. The age of galactic cooperation, led by human wisdom, had begun. And this time, everyone knew their place at the table.